Hey there. I want to start with a question that might feel a little too real. How many times in the last week did you catch yourself just reacting to life? Not consciously choosing your response, but genuinely having a knee-jerk reaction. To a sharp email from a colleague, to getting stuck in traffic, to an unexpected demand from a family member. That feeling of being on autopilot, where your emotions seem to be in the driver's seat. I've been there more times than I can count. For the longest time, I operated under a huge misunderstanding. I thought that strength was all about sucking it up, clamping down on what I was feeling and acting like I had it all together. You know the mantra we all hear, just act as if nothing bothers you. Fake it till you make it, but on the inside. It felt like a constant, quiet war. A civil war inside myself, where part of me was feeling something, and another part was screaming at me to stop feeling it. It was exhausting. And here's the most liberating thing I've learned, something that completely changed my perspective. One of the most profound psychologists of the 20th century, Carl Jung, believed that very approach was a dead end. He would say that true, unshakable strength isn't born from burying our emotions, but from doing the exact opposite, from engaging with them consciously, with curiosity, and even with compassion. So, if you're tired of that internal roller coaster, if you're done with the cycle of reaction and regret, and you're ready to build a genuine, resilient core that doesn't depend on everything going right on the outside, then you're in the right place. This isn't about building a high wall against the world. It is about learning the language of your own inner world so you can finally find peace within it. And because this is such a personal journey, I want this to be a conversation. I'll be asking you questions along the way, and I genuinely want you to think about them. Let's dive in. But before we go further, if this idea of finding a different, more authentic kind of strength resonates with you, if you're even a little bit curious to see if there's another way, do me a huge favor and hit that like button right now. It really helps me know what content matters most to you, and it helps others who might need this message find their way here. Thank you. Part 1. What is true emotional immunity? It's not what you think. Let's start by debunking a myth. We often confuse emotional strength with being tough, like a fortress with impenetrable walls. We admire the stoic, the person who never seems to flinch, who appears completely unfazed by chaos. But I want to propose a different, I think more beautiful and certainly more sustainable image. Think of a deeply rooted tree in a storm. It doesn't resist the wind. It doesn't try to be rigid and unmovable. Instead, it has deep roots. It sways, it bends, but it doesn't break. The storm rages round it, but at its core, it maintains its connection to the earth. This, according to Jung's wisdom, is what real strength looks like. It's not rigidity, it's balance. It's the ability to find your center of gravity no matter what's happening around you. And this is what I call genuine emotional immunity. Let me be crystal clear, because this is the most important point. It is not an immunity to feeling. That's numbness. That's the fortress, and living in a fortress is lonely and dark. True emotional immunity is an immunity to being hijacked by those feelings. It's about creating that crucial, life-changing space between something happening and your response to it. In that space, there is your power. In that space, there is your freedom. So, what's the master key to finding this space? It lies in understanding a simple but profound truth. The meaning we assign to an event is almost always more powerful than the event itself. The story we tell ourselves about what happened dictates our emotional reality far more than the actual facts. Let's do a quick thought experiment. Imagine two people on the same team, both passed over for the same promotion. The external event is identical. Person A's story. They tell themselves, "This is proof I'm not good enough. My boss never valued me. I'm a fraud." This isn't just a setback. It's a catastrophic failure that defines my entire career. Can you feel the weight of that story? The shame, the anger, the defeat. Person B's story. They tell themselves, "This is really disappointing and it hurts. I wanted that rule." But it's also data. I need to understand why this happened. Maybe my skills aren't the right fit for this particular path, or maybe this is actually a hidden signpost, nudging me to finally explore that side project I'm truly passionate about. This story has pain too, but it's coupled with curiosity and a sense of agency. The event was identical. The stories they consciously or unconsciously chose to believe created two completely different emotional worlds. And this leads us to the most crucial question. Where do these automatic, often painful stories come from? Why does one person default to story A and another to story B? Jung would point directly to what he called our shadow. This is one of his most powerful and lasting ideas. Your shadow isn't a monster. It's the collection of all the parts of yourself that you've been taught to repress, deny, or hide away because you believe they are unacceptable. Your jealousy, your need for control, your laziness, your hidden insecurities, your pride, all the things you'd rather not see in the mirror. And here's the critical insight that changes everything. Your biggest, most intense triggers are almost always direct messages from your shadow. That colleague whose arrogance just makes your blood boil. There's a chance they are mirroring a hidden desire for recognition or respect that you don't allow yourself to acknowledge. That piece of criticism that sends you into a spiral of shame for days. It probably landed directly on a hidden, tender insecurity you've been carrying for years, a wound you've been trying to ignore. The journey to emotional immunity, then, isn't about building higher walls against the outside world. It's about kindly, courageously turning on the lights inside yourself and understanding what's really in there. It's an inner transformation that then changes your entire outer experience. I want you to think about this for a moment. Can you identify one recent trigger in your own life? Maybe a comment from someone, or a specific situation at work or home, that caused a reaction in you that felt bigger, more intense, than the event itself seemed to warrant. Just hit pause for a second if you need to. Don't judge it. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just notice it. That simple act of noticing, without judgment, is the first and most important step on this path. And if you feel comfortable, maybe even drop a word in the comments about what you noticed, something like criticism or being ignored or feeling left out. Seeing what we all share can be an incredibly powerful reminder that we're not alone in this. Part 2. The two most powerful Jungian practices for inner strength. Okay, so we understand the theory. But how do we actually create that space between trigger and response? How do we move from being a puppet of our patterns to being the conscious author of our life? It comes down to two fundamental practices. The first and most important is learning to become the observer of your own mind. This is the ultimate psychological power move. Right now, you probably tend to completely identify with your thoughts and feelings. You think, "I am angry," or "I am an anxious person." This language merges you with the emotion. There is no space. The practice of the observer is about creating a subtle but profound shift in perspective. It's about learning to step back and witness your thoughts and feelings like a curious, kind, and neutral scientist. So instead of "I am anxious," you learn to think, "Oh, interesting. I am noticing that I am experiencing the sensation of anxiety right now. I wonder what that's about. This simple shift is a superpower. It creates a tiny bit of distance, just enough so you're not drowning in the wave, but rather watching it from the shore. This distance allows you to ask the most crucial questions. Is this thought actually true? Is it 100% fact? Is this feeling based solely on the present moment, or is it an old, familiar recording from my past playing it again? Let me give you a practical way to start this today. I call it the notice and name technique. For the next 24 hours, your only job is to catch one or two of those automatic reactions. Don't try to change them. Don't judge them. Just notice them. When you feel that surge of road rage, instead of immediately honking and yelling, just say to yourself, internally, interesting. There is impatience. When you feel the urge to get defensive in a conversation, just pause for a half-second and say, notice defensiveness. When you feel a wave of insecurity, whisper to yourself, there's insecurity. This isn't passive. It is the active, foundational first step to reclaiming your power from the autopilot. Now, the second practice builds directly on the first. It's about befriending your emotions. We've been culturally trained to fight what we label as negative emotions. To conquer anger, to battle fear, to overcome sadness. But Jung offers a radical reframe. He saw these emotions not as enemies to be defeated, but as messengers from our unconscious, carrying vital, often ignored information. Anger is often a message that a personal boundary has been violated. It's your psyche's way of saying, this is not okay for me. Sadness can signal a need for release, for mourning, for healing. It's a signal that something mattered to you. Fear is often a spotlight, highlighting an area where you feel unprepared or a real risk you need to assess. So, mastering your emotions isn't about suppression. It's about learning to listen to them. The next time you feel a strong, uncomfortable emotion, try this simple 3-step process instead of reacting or repressing. First, pause, take one deep, intentional breath. This isn't just a cliché. It physically interrupts the amygdala hijack, the body's automatic stress response. Second, feel it. Allow the sensation to be in your body for a moment without trying to make it go away. Where do you feel it? In your chest? Your stomach? Just notice the physical manifestation. Third, get curious. Ask the emotion, gently. What are you trying to tell me? What do I need to understand or pay attention to right now to feel safe, respected, or whole? This practice of conscious engagement is how we begin to integrate our shadow. We stop seeing our difficult parts as monsters to be locked away and start seeing them as lost, neglected, or scared aspects of ourselves that are desperate to be heard and integrated. This is the heart of Jung's process of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming a whole, integrated person, no longer at war with yourself. This is deep work, and it can bring up a lot. If you're finding value in this new perspective, in the idea that you can have a different relationship with your own inner world, please consider subscribing to the channel. We're building a community here dedicated to living more conscious and empowered lives, and we'd love for you to join us on this journey. And I'm really curious, what's the one emotion you find most challenging to befriend? Is it anger, fear, a sense of shame? Let me know in the comments below. Just naming it and sharing it can take away some of its power, and you'll quickly see that you are not alone in that struggle. Let's start a supportive conversation right there. Part 3. Creating a reality where you are the author. When you start consistently practicing these two things, observing your mind and befriending your emotions, something profound and beautiful begins to shift. You gradually start to author your reality. Now, I want to be clear. This isn't about magical thinking or manifesting a sports car with positive thoughts. It's a much more practical and powerful understanding that your inner world is the primary lens through which you perceive and interpret everything outside of you. Think of it this way. A person who is constantly self-critical on the inside will experience the world as a harsh, judgmental place. They'll perceive neutral comments as criticisms and setbacks as personal failures. Conversely, a person who has found a sense of basic compassion and acceptance for themselves will meet the world with more openness and resilience. They'll see the same neutral comment as just feedback, and the same setback as a solvable problem. Your internal state colors your entire experience of reality. This brings us to one of Jung's most famous quotes, and it's a game changer. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Let that sink in. That means that all those hidden shadow elements, those unconscious triggers and old stories, are like invisible hands steering the ship of your life. And as long as they're unconscious, you'll feel like you're just a passenger, buffeted by a fate you can't control. But when you bring the light of awareness to these hidden drivers, when you make the unconscious conscious, everything changes. You stop being a victim of circumstance. You take the wheel. You become the author of your story. You start making choices that aligned with your true, deep values, not with external pressures or unconscious fears. You set boundaries not as angry walls to keep people out, but as loving, conscious gates that you, and only you, decide how to open and close. You begin to live a life that feels authentically, uniquely, and joyfully yours. So let me ask you one last, forward-looking question. Fast forward 6 months from now. If you truly embraced these practices, if you made a habit of being the observer, and approached your emotions with curiosity instead of fear, what's one specific, small thing that would be different in your daily life? Maybe you'd feel a sense of calm during a work presentation instead of anxiety. Maybe you'd be able to have a difficult conversation with a loved one without getting defensive. Maybe you'd just feel a little more light, a little more freedom in your own heart. Hold on to that image. Let that be your compass. Let that be the vision that guides you on the days when it feels difficult. So, to recap this journey we've taken together. First, true strength is balance and resilience, not rigid suppression. Second, your triggers are not nuisances. They are clues to your hidden shadow, your greatest teachers. Third, practice being the observer to create that essential space between event and reaction. Fourth, befriend your emotions. Listen to their messages. They are trying to guide you home to yourself. This isn't about becoming a person who never feels pain or discomfort. It's about becoming a person who can navigate those inevitable storms without losing their sense of self. A person who can feel the wave of emotion without being swept away by it. Now, let's turn this into action. Your first challenge is to practice the notice and name technique just once before the day ends. Then, if you feel like it, come back here and tell us how it went in the comments. Did you notice something surprising about yourself? Did it create even a moment of pause? If this conversation felt valuable, if it gave you a new perspective, please subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what's next. We have more content coming on how to apply these deep psychological principles for a more fulfilling everyday life. And finally, what was your single biggest takeaway from our time together? Was it the idea of the shadow? The power of being the observer? Share it below. Your insight might be the exact aha moment someone else scrolling through the comments needs to hear today. Thank you for your time, your courage, and your openness. Remember, You are not just passively surviving your life. You have the power, right now, to consciously and courageously create it. We'll see you in the next video.